Self-discipline is not only a personal trait, but also a combination of various factors, from the environment to genetics and daily habits. In modern society, we often hear about the importance of cultivating self-discipline, but few truly understand its essence. In reality, developing self-discipline is not an easy task. It requires patience and the ability to adjust behavior in the context of a world full of temptations and challenges. Let's explore further how self-discipline affects our lives. In Norse mythology, Odin, the supreme god, also known as the All-Father, hung himself on Yggdrasil, the world tree connecting the 9 realms, for 9 days and nights. A spear pierced his chest as he hung suspended between life and death. There, he gazed down into the magical well, desperately seeking the knowledge of the runes, ancient symbols containing sacred wisdom. When the divine runes finally appeared and granted him power, Odin became the embodiment of great sacrifice, not for anyone else, but for himself. Specifically, he sacrificed his present self to empower his future self. This story is not just a myth, but also a profound metaphor for self-discipline and personal sacrifice for growth. Human tradition has long celebrated the virtue of self-control. From the story of Adam and Eve in the Bible to the Pandora's box in Greek mythology, losing control always leads to consequences. In contrast, enduring present hardships to achieve a better future is praised as a noble act. Therefore, self-discipline is not just willpower. It is a philosophical choice, the choice to become a better version of oneself. Self-discipline, or the ability to control oneself, is often defined as making right decisions in the long term by overcoming short-term temptations. But when asked how to achieve this, many people will mention willpower or mental strength. However, the concept of willpower is actually quite vague and difficult to grasp. To understand this better, we need to start at the origin of all behavior, the decision-making process. At any given moment, a person is choosing how to act. The problem arises when we must decide between an immediate reward and a long-term benefit that doesn't provide instant satisfaction. This is the essence of delaying gratification, one of the core manifestations of self-discipline. So, what allows us to overcome momentary desires? The answer lies in the brain, which is responsible for all human behavior. A variety of factors influence our decisions, from genes, hormones, environment, past experiences, to the current situation. But most importantly, our actions can be traced back to the activity of a neurotransmitter, dopamine. Dopamine is not only related to rewards, but primarily to the anticipation of rewards. When we see a cue that leads to a reward, even before we receive it, the brain starts releasing dopamine to drive us to act. Therefore, self-discipline is not simply about enduring, but about managing how we perceive and respond to rewards through our biological system within ourselves. When it comes to dopamine, the prominent neurotransmitter in the brain, many people immediately associate it with pleasure or reward. However, research from neuroscientists like Robert Sapolsky has shown that dopamine is not simply a response to rewards, but rather reacts more strongly to signals that precede the reward. In other words, dopamine is closely linked to expectation, not just the moment the reward is received. Imagine a monkey in an experiment. Initially, when it pulls a lever 10 times, it is rewarded with a raising. Later, a light is turned on to signal that the lever will appear, a cue indicating the reward is coming. Over time, the monkey begins to release dopamine when it sees the light, rather than when it eats the raisin. It becomes eager and motivated from the moment the expectation is formed. This is deeply connected to human self-discipline. When faced with 2 choices, an immediate reward and a larger reward that requires waiting, the brain sends dopamine to different areas depending on the choice. If dopamine is sent to the limbic region, associated with immediate pleasure, we are more likely to choose the immediate reward. Conversely, if dopamine activates the frontocortical region, related to long-term thinking, we may be able to delay gratification. Thus, self-discipline is not just a mental effort, but a competition within the brain between 2 desire systems, one that wants everything right now and one that is willing to wait for a greater goal. Self-discipline, at its core, is the ability to delay short-term gratification in order to achieve a larger reward in the future. But why does the brain choose one over the other? The answer lies in how the brain evaluates rewards based on two main factors: attractiveness and waiting time. Imagine you're given a choice between $100 today or $100 tomorrow. Clearly, most people would choose to take the money immediately because there's no reason to wait. But what if the choice changes to $100 today and $200 tomorrow? Many would consider waiting, as the reward has significantly increased. However, if the amount is only raised to $101, it's highly likely that you'll still choose the $100 today. Your brain is constantly making these calculations unconsciously. It weighs the cost of time. How much reward is enticing enough to wait for? These calculations are made through the dopamine system, which assesses the potential value of the reward and the time required to attain it. From this, we see that self-discipline is not simply about resisting temptation, but rather a process of the brain evaluating and comparing rewards. The ability to delay gratification depends on whether the brain perceives the future reward as valuable enough to wait for, and this is influenced by past experiences, environment, habits, and personal experiences. Human nature is driven by desire. We are born with endless needs and wants. Every time a need is satisfied, the brain remembers how we achieved it, forming beliefs and repetitive behaviors. When the need arises again, those beliefs are activated, dopamine is released, motivating us to repeat the previous actions. Gradually, habits are formed as a bridge between internal desires and external actions. Each time you repeat a behavior to fulfill a want, the neural pathway in your brain is strengthened, making the response automatic. This is why some people get addicted to checking their phones, snacking, or procrastinating. Not because they are weak, but because the brain has learned that these actions once brought comfort. The issue lies in the fact that, in order to change a habit, you must not only change yourself, but also change the environment, the very place where these reactions are created and maintained. And the environment is largely beyond personal control. This is why self-discipline is so difficult. We often blame ourselves for lacking willpower, but in reality, self-discipline is not only an internal battle, but also the result of the long-term interaction between the brain, life experiences, and the surrounding environment. To change, we need to realize that both ourselves and our circumstances are two sides of the same coin, inseparable. Self-discipline is a complex process that not only depends on personal willpower, but also on the environment and external factors. How we react to temptations, decide whether to persevere, and build good habits are key components in developing self-discipline. However, in order to achieve this, the surrounding environment plays a crucial role in creating opportunities, challenges, and motivations for us to make decisions that benefit our future. Therefore, create a positive environment and nurture good habits starting today. To change ourselves, we not only need to improve personal control, but also understand how to create conditions conducive to the sustainable development of self-discipline. If you found this information helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to follow the upcoming videos.